My name is Kavita Amaratunga. I'm a psychologist for the last 6 years. My main areas are in dealing with mental health for adults in the areas of depression, anxiety, self-esteem, and I hope to hopefully make an impact in Sri Lanka in terms of bringing awareness to overall health and well-being, especially obviously mental health. Yes and no. I think there is a generational difference in our understanding of mental health. Some of the older generations, I think the idea of seeking help and things like that comes very difficult to them. But the good thing about social media and things like that is that younger people are becoming more aware that mental health is a very real aspect of our lives that we need to pay attention to, and to make sure that we live an overall healthy lifestyle, that we really do need to pay attention to mental health. So it's a yes and no answer. I think there's a lot of good things coming out in terms of initiatives such as these as well. Acknowledging mental health has to happen on many different fronts, right? It needs to happen at an individual level. We need to know when we are not feeling great, that we need to stop and pause and take a moment to see what's going on and seeking help. But it also has to happen at a familial level with our friends. It needs to happen in organizations, in terms of the policies they take in providing support for people who might have mental health. Because if we, break our leg, or if we fall sick physically, getting leave is not a big deal, right? But if we say we're anxious or depressed, that's not really taken as a serious condition in organizations. So we really need to go at that level. And also at a government level, acknowledging it as a real aspect that we need to incorporate into every level of, society. It really needs to be acknowledged, I think. So it's really, really important to do so. See, there are so many different ways in which mental health issues can manifest, but a lot of the times you would notice that the person who is having a mental health issue might be a bit more withdrawn from people. They might not be enjoying the same things that they enjoyed. They might withdraw from their families and friends. So there's a lot of isolation going on. And also you might see that they are finding it hard to concentrate. They might not be performing at the same level that they used to at work, things like that. And sometimes it can also manifest in physical forms. We can have headaches and backaches and things like that. So depending on the type of mental health issue, it'll be different, but most often you see those, we call it symptoms, but those are the signs that we would normally recognize as, maybe it's time to look into that person and check in with that person at that point. When it comes to helping people, it's a tough one, right? Because I think we come from a culture where we say, there, don't be sad, don't be upset. And that can sometimes be, it's from the best of intentions, but it can be a bit problematic sometimes. It might not be helpful to that person. So I think we as people, we have to figure out how to listen without having to give advice all the time, right? Just to listen to them, just to be a person that they can vent to. So make yourself free of judgment and biases, that you just let them, explain what's going on. And then obviously getting ourselves aware of the types of support that is available, right? So professional support in terms of reaching out to, whether it's a counselor or a psychologist, or if there's a medical intervention required, going to a psychiatrist, right? So it's individual responsibility in a way to know what support is available. But sometimes it can be as simple as recommending them a great book that helped you. So it doesn't have to be these big gestures to help somebody. But the key, I think, is actively listening without trying to solve the issue. Depression is very real. It is one of the most debilitating conditions in the world, right? And it can happen in many ways, right? So we always have an idea of what depression is, that this, it's always crying or sad or upset. But sometimes it can be this sort of very numb feeling that a person might experience. They might just once again be very isolated and withdrawn. And that's universal across cultures, right? How can we help somebody like that is, I think, the first, the earlier question. It's to listen and offer them the most, the best support that you can give is to direct them to a professional, the same way we would with any other health condition, right? Like I always give the example of, if we have a cold or a cough or fever or a heart issue, we go to a doctor. We don't think, oh, he's going to judge me, he's going to, think anything bad of me, right? So we have to have that same attitude towards mental health and make sure that they get that professional support if they're undergoing something as serious as depression. Because there are many ways in which we can experience depression. There is major depression, which is the one that we all know about, right? There is bipolar disorder, where it's sort of these mood swings that you might have. There's postpartum depression that a lot of, young mothers experience. So there's lots of different ways in which depression manifests. So usually we leave that up to a professional to know when to support, but also being a good friend or a good family member and just listening is the way to help. Tough question. I think realistically, no, because it's not really acknowledged in our health syllabuses as far as I know. The good thing is a lot of individual schools have taken on the responsibility a little bit, and they have these mindfulness programs for students and things like that, which are very helpful. But I think it needs to happen at a much wider level to have impact, right? Governments really need to include that into the health syllabus, into the daily, timetables and curriculums and things like that, because it is an increased period of stress, I would say, compared to other times in history. So it's really important for, at once again, a government level, for them to train teachers to identify mental health problems in children. A lot of times I think there's a lack of resources in doing so. And schools themselves, encouraging schools, funding schools to have these programs more and more would be, I think, a great first step forward in including that into our education system, because we really do need to pay attention to the education system. It really does come first, in terms of getting a new generation of people who are very mentally healthy. Advice in maintaining good health. A lot of times people think that it's big things, big solutions that help us be mentally healthy. It's not. It's really the everyday things that we do, right? So it is paying attention to our exercise, eating healthy, sleeping sufficiently, right? I'll call them baseline activities, right? They don't directly change you drastically, but they really help in setting a good baseline for us to face the issues that we have every day, right? So those basic things are a first. Having time for things you enjoy, whether it's your social life, whether it's your hobbies, right? It can be music or art or whatever. We really do need to have time at least once a week to do things we enjoy outside of our work and, all of those things. So paying attention to those is the first step, right? And then outside of that, it is practicing gratitude. It is having time to reflect. It is taking some time to just switch off your brain sometimes. All of those tiny things cumulatively make such an impact on our mental health in the long run. So it's not these big grand gestures that normally make a huge difference. It's the everyday things. It's the same as just because we eat salad one day doesn't mean we are never going to get a heart attack, right? We have to every day eat healthy and do all of those things. So mental health is, the way we need to take care of mental health is just like the way we take care of our physical health. And I think it's really important for people to understand that it is very similar in how we need to approach it as well. Yes, definitely, right? Because if we are constantly going to be always having junk food and very, heavily oily food and not basically food without nutrition, the main organ that functions with our mental health is our brain. It's still an organ in our body. So whether it is the different hormones and the difficult chemical reactions that happen in our brain, the sustenance is still our food. So we need to pay attention to having I always give like, eat healthy 80% of the time is good enough, right? We need to make sure that we get our omega-3s. We need to get enough sunlight in terms of vitamin D, right? Those vitamins and minerals are so important to us. So diet is definitely an area we don't think has an impact, but definitely does, because what we put into our body impacts how we feel as well, right? Normally, if we have like this big heavy meal, we feel lethargic, and then we don't pay attention to the rest of our health. So it's definitely this cycle that can continue if we don't pay attention to it. So there's just some pointers for us to think about when we think about diet. I think the most important thing for me to talk about when it comes to mental health is for us to realize that mental health is as important, and the approach of it is as similar to physical health, right? We do need to pay attention to it. We can't ignore it and hope the problem goes away, right? That's number one. Number two is that it is really simple steps that we need to take care of our mental health, right? Listen to our body, listen to our mind, know when to take a breath and pause. And then obviously, if we notice somebody who is going through something, who is finding it difficult, who is struggling or is overwhelmed, for us to know that there is support out there, and that we need to be able to not have these prejudices and biases getting in the way of us seeking help just because we feel like we're going to be seen as weaker. Because we're not weaker for seeking help, right? It makes us better if we can improve ourselves. So I guess those thoughts are what I want to sort of leave everyone with in terms of mental health.